All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, especially to our lovely hosts, Diane and Colin over there. Thank you so much for hosting us today for this conversation. So the run-of show this morning will be just quick introductions around, and then Senator Welch will provide some updates on what he's sort of seeing and hearing, and maybe a brief update on your most recent trip. And then we will go around and ask each participant to share what you'd like, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and open it up to conversation discussion from there. And following, at the conclusion of the roundtable, we will close the roundtable, and any members of the media who may wish to speak with you may do so here, and we will take a tour of Rigorous and hear what their company's all about. So, I'll let you.
Well, I want to, a couple of things. First of all, thank you so much for hosting us. Second, these tariffs are now a year into place, and everything I'm hearing from Vermont businesses is that they're really a major existential threat to the well-being of our businesses. There was a New York Times story today. I don't know if any of you saw it, but it's about the impact of tariffs up in Greensboro, Vermont. And one of the impacts is that Canadian visitors aren't coming. And one of our great cheese companies, one of our great beer companies, one of our great country stores is having a hemorrhage of revenue. And the things that I've heard from Vermont businesses, and some, Sarah, I think you were with us when we did, I think, our first tariff roundtable up in St. Albans, is that it's two things. Number one, it increases expense, which eventually has to be passed on to customers. So it's going to add to the affordability challenge. And it makes it really tough on our businesses because it obviously squeezes your bottom line, and you're super sensitive about pricing, and you've got this added pressure over which you have no control. But the second thing I've heard on a regular basis is that they're variable. They change from day to day. So you can't run a business if you don't know what the foundation is, and things are changing all the time. The third thing I want to say is this is a total self-inflicted wound. Okay, this is not some exterior thing like COVID. It's not something where there's been a market change that you had no control over but have to adjust to. This is something that was implemented by the administration. This is not a congressional act. And I think it's really, really essential that there be an honest assessment of, is this helping us in our economy? Is it helping us with creating and maintaining jobs, or is it hurting? And then fourth, this is where Congress has, in my view, failed. Under the Article 1 provisions of our Constitution, the taxing authority belongs to the Congress. And one of the reasons for that is that people don't like taxes. So if we're going to raise them and we have to have revenues for government, we have to be accountable. What's happened is the executive has taken over that. And in my view, there should be opposition from Congress to ceding the responsibility as well as authority that we have. And then the final point, to just indicate how arbitrary the tariff tool is being used, it's now being inflicted on our allies unless they are supportive of the United States taking over Greenland. And that's a totally crazy thing for us to have as a goal, since Denmark and Greenland are our allies, since Greenland and Denmark are totally cooperative with whatever national security needs we have. So there's a business impact, and that's hurting us here in Vermont. There's a political impact where it's being used now to erode our relationship with the allies that we've had since World War II. And there's a constitutional issue here where, in my view, if you have executive overreach, you can't have that be matched with congressional capitulation. Just so you know, I think that if there's going to be any taxing authority, it has to be voted on by Congress. We have to be held accountable. You can decide whether you want to vote for any of us who vote yes or no. But that's accountability. But the thing that I'm most concerned about is the impact of these tariffs on everyday businesses in Vermont. It's tough here. Affordability issues are really, really challenging. If we're going to have a strong economy, we have to have strong local manufacturing. You know, some of you have all, or derivative products like the whiskey that you're making. So I just want to express to you my gratitude that you're hanging in despite the administration imposing these tariffs that have made what is a very, very challenging job much, much more difficult. So those are my introductory remarks, but I end by expressing to you my gratitude for everything you're doing for Vermont, for your employees, and for our economy. I really, really appreciate it.
Tim, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So Tim Tierney, I work for the Department of Economic Development and the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And my job is I'm Director of International Trade and Business Recruitment, where I actually go out of state, out of country to do foreign direct investment. Before a year ago, I was really focused on exporting and recruitment. And since then, I've had to learn a lot about importing, which wasn't really a major factor for our department. So it's been pretty interesting. But the biggest thing, I think, as the Senator said too, is here we trying to help these small businesses that come to us, and it's been really tough to give answers or guidance because it's ever changing, and it's also so beyond the scope of many of these small businesses that it's been obviously challenging, and you can feel the impact. And the tourism piece is a very large part of it. I actually ran Kingdom Trails up in East Burke for many years, and really built up the Canadian business, and to see that the impact it had on a small place like even in Greensboro, where that visitation has impacted something that we thought was a really strong economy or economic driver, and it's you can just see it. And a lot of that is not even tariffs. That's obviously the messaging that's coming out that's impacting that as well. So that's, it's all very difficult. And I like I said, it's hearing how creative people have had to get. That's what I'm here to listen to and try to help. So.
Awesome. So do you want our thoughts as well as intro now, or what's your preference?
Oh, I think we could just go ahead and begin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Please share all of it.
So Nora Ganley-Roper, Lost Lantern Whiskey. We're based out of Vergennes, Vermont, so Addison County. We're actually not a distillery. We're what's called an independent bottler, which means we buy mature casks of whiskey from distilleries all over the United States. We ship it here to Vermont, and then we either bottle the whiskey or I blend the whiskey from multiple places together. So we're curators and blenders.
Wow.
We work with distilleries all over the country. So the interesting thing is we get to see impacts everywhere. And sometimes they're passed along to us. And sometimes the good things are passed along as well. But the alcohol industry is in an interesting place in general. You may have read some articles about how distilleries are not producing. So for us, anything economic or external is compounding with what the industry is experiencing at large. Some of the biggest companies are down 5, 10, 20%. And then you add in something like tariffs to that, and it's just a difficult place to be in. For us, tariffs have added costs, bottles, the adhesive on our stickers. We're honestly slightly less impacted that way because we're buying whiskey from the United States. Some other companies that are like ours that are buying from Scotland or England or Japan are in a really bad spot. We're lucky because we just do American whiskey. The biggest impact for us with tariffs in general is actually what's happening in Canada. So retaliation, where a lot of the provinces over there have fully pulled American spirits, whiskey, off the shelves entirely. Mm-hmm. It actually meant that our Canadian importer has effectively gone under because they were working with only American companies.
So the importer in Canada
into Canada
has gone out of
has
business.
Stopped working in the province that we
goodness.
worked
Wow.
in. Luckily for us, we were able to pivot to other markets in the United States, and we have demand elsewhere. So we didn't feel direct impact last year, but it changed our plans. And there were a number of other companies that use that same importer that I have to imagine are being impacted substantially. And it's wild that there's this just knock-on kind of snowballing impact of what tariffs do, where they hurt your bottom line, but then they also lead to different factors when you start thinking about export. For us, we were planning to export outside of the United States and Canada this year. We've completely shelved those plans because without any ability to plan, like we're all going to probably talk about, you can't commit to pricing. You can't commit to certain amounts of product that we can send to places like England and Germany and Australia. We were planning to do all of that later in 2026. So we've seen substantial impacts of our plans. And then the one thing I did want to mention that's slightly tangential to tariffs, but also a governmental thing, is for us, and I will only take 10 seconds for this, government shutdowns are also a huge impact for the industry, which all of these are tied up, but it's not known generally outside of our industry how much a government shutdown impacts.
Elaborate on that. Yeah.
So every single label in the alcohol industry is approved by the federal government. Every permit that we have to pull for different things that we do through our process has to be approved by the government. So it effectively halts new releases for the entire industry when the government is shut down. There were a lot of small craft distilleries in Vermont, outside of Vermont, that were impacted at the end of last year because they weren't able to put out their holiday spirits. So all of these are so intermingled in a way that creates this interesting time in the alcohol industry for sure, with the lack of clarity.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
My name is Tierney. I'm the CEO of Rovers North. We import and sell automotive parts. Our niche is old classic Land Rovers, so new parts for old vehicles. We were founded.
Classic Rovers?
Yeah.
Land Rovers?
Just
That's
the older
so amazing.
vehicles. Yeah.
How did you think of that? I mean,
My father founded the company in 1979. He had an old
Is
broken down
that
Land
amazing?
Rover and he needed to work on it.
Oh my, that is such an incredible story.
I think you have a new customer here.
So we became employee owned in 2024, and it's been a really difficult time for us with the tariffs. We had our first layoffs in company history. Our staff's gotten about 20% smaller, which is really difficult and challenging for us.
Yeah, these are all people that are like family to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, our business by volume is down about 30%. Our cost of goods have exploded. The customers are price sensitive, so we're not able to just increase our pricing. We're seeing about 5 to 7 times as much tariffs as in the past, and it's really inconsistent and difficult for us. We don't actually know how the tariffs are going to be applied until we get the bill weeks after we've received the product and already started selling it. Our brokers are unable to figure it out because it comes down to the agent processing the import paperwork. Customs website isn't clear. Sometimes they apply steel and aluminum tariffs. Sometimes it's automotive tariffs. Sometimes it's just country of origin tariffs.
So even the implementation is inconsistent.
Correct.
And by the way, one of the things that we've seen is that people who are really connected, that know the president or know the secretary of treasurer, they've got his number, they call up and they get an exemption. I mean, that's an unbelievable thing. You have to compete on price, on quality, on service. But now it's about access. If you get access, then you get the favorable deal. If you don't, you get stuck. Well, anyway, that's particularly upsetting because I think that changes the business model from price, service, quality to access. Who do you know? But go ahead.
Well, we've had some really difficult applications of that where they've recently decided that some corrosion prevention chemicals we import are going to be charged steel and aluminum tariffs at 50%. Because the metal containers that the product we're buying comes in makes it metal. So they apply the steel and aluminum tariff to everything.
So even though it's a container.
Yeah.
So if it came in plastic, you wouldn't be paying that.
Right. And we've had some success at getting, refunds after reapplying with new paperwork and whatnot, but it's
That's
just
added
become
burden for you.
It's a really cumbersome and challenging process. We're spending probably 3 times as much of our staff's energy working on the importation efforts, and that's up front, and we spend infinitely more time analyzing and checking to make sure it's been done correctly. In the past, this isn't something that was a major burden of ours, but now that the duties are so significant and such an incredible increase in our cost of goods, we're really having to make sure it's all been done accurately, which is especially a problem because there's such variability in the implementation of the tariffs. It's like you said, an existential crisis that we've never seen before. Founded in 1979, we've never had to lay off staff before except for this. And it just feels like an unnecessary own goal. We didn't have to start a trade war with our allies,
right.
And now we're talking about the war with Europe and those retaliatory tariffs because they won't give us Greenland and an extra 50% there. And, over half our product comes from Europe. And it's, the argument that we should just switch to American made is not at all possible. These things are not made in America, and where they are, they're many times more expensive. Our customers aren't going to pay 3 times as much for an American made brake pad. They just want to fix their vehicle and get it back on the road. And
Right.
we're really feeling the burden being squeezed in the middle, trying to increase our prices as little
Wow.
as possible, but needing to, because of course you can't lose on per
Right.
unit.
Right. Well, thank you. That's amazing. Thanks.
I'm Diane Abruzzini-Riggs. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer of Rigorous Technology. We make robots for manufacturers, and so we procure from manufacturers and we design products to support manufacturers. So we feel like we have a pretty unique lens into the needs across the state and across the country. When the tariffs were first announced, we did hear a mixed bag of reviews. Some companies in Vermont specifically were getting bids that they never had access to before, selling brackets to Walmart or injection molding that would have displaced Chinese manufacturers. However, those bids never turned into POs, and like you said, it was largely the uncertainty. Businesses who are manufacturing, as well as those who are buying products, are having trouble making large changes because they don't know where we're going to land when it actually sets out to dry.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, you have companies across the country announcing multi-billion-dollar investments in U.S. manufacturing. But the reality is, over the last 9 months, manufacturing has had consistent declines. And in Vermont itself, we've actually lost half of our manufacturing workforce over the last 20 years. With our aging demographics, as well as our extremely high cost of living, we are a microscope for the rest of the country, and we are most vulnerable to those trends affecting us here first. I see tariffs being a real challenge because as manufacturers are looking to invest in their technologies, you can't buy these machines in the United States. They're not made here. And so when you're buying a multi-million-dollar machine with an unknown added price tag, it just leaves everyone in a holding pattern.
Mm-hmm.
The same with building renovations. We're hearing HVAC, what they might have quoted a year ago, will be 50 to 100 times more expensive when they actually have it
Wait,
installed.
50 times more?
50%.
50%. Yeah.
50 to 100%
Yeah.
more expensive.
It's a
That
lot.
would be obscene. And so we see a lot of manufacturers, they feel like there may be momentum, but they're not ready to make those decisions because they have a very long-term horizon. And if they move too quickly, then they're going to be in a cash crunch without that U.S. demand really supporting paying more for a product that they used to pay less for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say, though, at the same time, manufacturing is in crisis here in Vermont and nationwide, and there are radical policies that will be needed to maintain or increase U.S. production of goods and services. And so while I don't necessarily see the execution of these tariffs as being a net positive from what we've seen, I do appreciate that there are more intention and awareness in the media and in government for the needs of manufacturing and the reality of what that brings to our state and our country. Like you said earlier today, manufacturing companies are often anchors of rural communities.
Right.
They're one of the only industries where you can have an entry-level job but continue a 30-year career there, enter the middle class, or even into executive leadership. We see manufacturing supporting not only their employees, but the communities around them, sponsoring Little League,
Right.
They really are a big part of more than just the tax base. And as their costs rise, the biggest cost that they really see is the cost of labor. And the cost of living in the surrounding areas is what's driving that.
Mhm.
And I hope that across the aisle, we can find policies that will encourage more investment into modernizing and increasing production in Vermont.
Well, that was eloquent. Yeah, very, very, very well said. Thank you. Yeah.
My name is Jake Holscheider. I'm president and CEO of A&M Derringer up in St. Albans. We're a 100-plus-year-old Vermont family business. We're customs brokers predominantly, which means we help companies import their products to the United States. We help our customers ensure that they're paying the right duty rates, they're in compliance with the regulations. And the themes I'm hearing from all of you are the same that we're hearing. It's the complexity, trying to understand a tweet that came out on a Friday night, that how to apply those duties and adjust our computer systems so that they calculate the correct duty Monday morning.
So that's literally true. That's not an exaggeration.
Absolutely true.
There'll be a tweet, which is not like a CFR or a rule that has been considered where you've had some opportunity for input,
Yeah.
and then where it is published. This is a Friday. You're going to your son's hockey game,
Right.
and there's a tweet, and you got to go back home or go back to the office.
Right.
Figure
And
it
so,
out.
so we have to apply the
It's amazing.
technology. We have to apply the technology. We have to learn. We have to learn the new tariff and understand it and how it's applied, and then we have to teach it to our customers, which historically we would learn first and then teach our customers second. We don't have time for that anymore. The tariffs are sometimes implemented within hours or the following day. So our experts learn quickly, and then they're teaching our employees and our customers at the same time, whether it's through some type of trade alert that we publish, or some kind of webinar that we're doing, which, I mean, we used to do maybe 12 a year. We're probably doing 4 or 5 a month now with webinars, educating and teaching. So complexity, cost is the obvious component. You know, predictability is another large one that we're hearing. The ability to forecast is gone, because it can change on a whim. And you know, so we're seeing all three of those come together,
Right.
really creating a really strong storm. And there were all these kind of sentiments towards the end of the year that the industry has kind of started to understand how to adjust to the tariffs, figuring out how to work it into some of their contracts, and that this year was going to be calmer. Well,
It's not.
it's not.
Well, what Caleb, what you said that was amazing to me. I mean, and you as the broker, you see all this, but you get the product, you pay the price, but you still don't have the tariff bill. So that comes up. You were saying later,
Weeks later,
weeks later. So you
you've
just
already
get
sold the
hammered.
product, perhaps at a loss.
Yeah.
So you're still seeing that?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you can't.
the
You cannot
predictability
function.
of the cost is you can have shipments that have been released from customs under one duty rate, but then by the time the final duties are calculated 10 days later, it's a different duty.
See, I mean, that's totally impossible, and that's really disregard by the administration to what their responsibilities are. I mean, that would be like me going and buying a car. I pay the price we agree to, and then 4 weeks later, they send me a $3,000 bill because of the tariff, right?
It's actually happening with vehicle imports on classic vehicles, and we've seen that they've applied the chicken tax, which was the white truck tax at 25%, and then an extra country of origin. And we've seen people get $50,000 bills because they assessed the value at $100,000, even though the customer paid $30,000 or whatever. And then they decided later, and they applied them retroactively. So we were seeing people who had imported vehicles 90 days early get a $50,000 bill, and the lawyers were saying it's real. There's nothing you can do but pay it.
I mean, we wonder why people get upset with government, right? That's unbelievable. You know, that what when you're telling me these stories, it's like they make no sense, and they're so fanciful that it's like you can't believe it, but it's true. That's the bad part.
And every time there's a new one that comes out, the rules are slightly different. You know, if it's coming from Asia, is the date of export the day that the ocean vessel left the port, or is it the day that the barge left a different port, or is it the date that it arrives in the country? And there's a lot of inconsistency when those new rules come out, where you don't even know what it's going to be, because there'll be a rule that's out, the date's implemented, but customs hasn't given the guidance or the instruction yet, probably because they can't figure it out themselves, because it takes time.
So no matter how careful you are, you're subject to these arbitrary actions that can be done at many different levels along the way.
Yeah, yes.
That's unreal.
Yeah. Which is very different than what we're used to. You know, we're used to knowing when tariffs are going to change. We have time to prepare. We have time to explain to our customers. Right. They know they better hurry up and get their shipments out of a certain country by a certain time. That the ability to plan and understand how their goods are going to be subject to the new tariffs is completely unpredictable.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But you see this every day. I mean, you see it across the economy because you're the broker and facilitating
it's basically all we do now.
Yeah. That's amazing. Wow.
Hi, everyone. I'm Don Baker, who's the president of Northern New England for TD Bank. I directly manage a team of about 70 commercial bankers across the states of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. My bankers deal with thousands of businesses across that Northern New England territory. What our focus is when we are dealing with clients is to understand their business, understand what they want to achieve, help them address challenges and capitalize on opportunities. And the tariff situation presents a lot of opportunities for us to help them in that regard. We have about 1,000 of those businesses that are based in the state of Vermont. We're working every day with those businesses that run the gamut from the smallest businesses in the state to the largest. It cuts across almost every industry you can imagine: manufacturing, tourism, agriculture, and beyond. So when we're working with those businesses, what we've seen with the tariff situation is, because every business is unique, every business is affected in a different way. We've certainly had businesses that have been helped by the tariffs. I think that Diane mentioned, there are a few that have at least been somewhat helped by that. For example, especially with some of our manufacturers that have 100% of their product made in the U.S., manufactured in the U.S., they're competing against typically importers, and there's a price differential on that high end. They've been helped to some extent. But of course, we've also had many of our clients in situations like we've heard about today that were negatively impacted. I have several examples, but I think we've had some great ones already, so I won't go into those. What we've seen more than anything relating to the tariff situation is, because we're talking to business owners and managers every day, what we see is the biggest complaint is the consistency of policy and the regulation. The more that you have uncertainty in that type of a policy making, the more you have just externalities that impact their business decisions, and that in things that affect them, that they are beyond their control. And as Jake mentioned, often change. The lead times on some of these projects, you have to order supply, sometimes a year ahead of time, ship it overseas. And if the rules are changing while it's en route, all of a sudden all the margin in your contract can disappear overnight.
That is astonishing. The story with port, was it the barge or was it the ocean-going vessel? I mean, you're just at the mercy of who knows what. And that, I just can't imagine, in the case you mentioned with people getting this bill after the fact, just it's like a kick in the stomach and there's nothing you can do. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Now, fortunately, my team of bankers have become experts pretty quickly in terms of certain strategies that businesses can take to mitigate some of the consequences, but you certainly can't eliminate them. And there are some things,
Right.
as Jake mentioned, that are beyond your control. One of the things we mentioned is talk to companies like Jake's, and so that is, a first step. But we've been successful in really ameliorating some of that damage when we've worked with clients early on these actions. One of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention, Senator, we have our senior economist from TD who's going to present at the Vermont Economic Conference next week. So he's done a lot of research in getting ready for that presentation. He's given me a sneak peek of some of his high notes, and of course he's going to be touching on the tariff policy. And one of the things that he brought up in terms of his conclusions that I want to just pass on, his data indicates that the biggest economic impact in Vermont is actually an indirect impact from the tariffs and more related to the overall trade policy that we've recently moved to in the U.S., and that is the impact on tourism. Because tourism makes up 10% of Vermont's GDP. It's a big component of our economy, and with Canadian traffic being down 30% year over year, those tourist dollars aren't coming here. And when you do the math on that, it's a tremendous economic impact on the state's economy.
Yeah, and that's not just the tariff. That's the insults.
Right. It's more relating to it's the tariff and beyond in terms of the sentiment that has been relayed to some of our foreign friends.
Yeah, no, we got together with a lot of folks from the tourism and hospitality industry up in Newport, and there was a lot of heartbreak there because our Vermont tourism industry not only depends on our Canadian visitors, but they have a lot of repeat customers that they like to see. It's kind of what gives you the joy of your work. People are glad to come down to Hill Farmstead or to Jasper Hill Cheese. Those two were mentioned in the New York Times article today that made the point that your economist apparently is going to reinforce.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Sarah.
Morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Meerhoff. I'm with the Associated General Contractors of Vermont. We represent more than 200 companies in the construction industry, so that's general contractors as well as affiliated businesses throughout the entire state. I will say for the construction industry, we have not seen the kind of worst case scenario, I would say, that was feared a year ago today. We have not seen this, exponential, incredible price increases for materials across the board that were really, really feared. Particularly, I will say, those working with Canadian timber were scared out of their minds, really,
Right.
a year ago at this point. What has been an incredible issue is this kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, hokey pokey of it all. The fact that it's this push and pull and the uncertainty, as so many of you have already mentioned. In construction in particular, and especially in Vermont, I would say, where it's in such high demand, you are drawing up contracts and laying out your price estimates and agreeing to those a year plus in advance. And when you don't know how much your timber is going to cost a year from now, or your screws, or your pipes, or this, that, and the other, it's incredibly hard to confidently put those numbers to paper. A lot of folks are always generally have what's called an escalation clause in these contracts, and so and that's a certain allowable amount that your final price can go up at the end of the day due to things like material cost changes. That being said, it was mentioned earlier, people have a pretty low threshold at this point because of the cost of living crisis.
But what you said is everybody's on hold, because if you have an escalation cost, it gives a little bit of security to the seller, but it gives an immense amount of insecurity to the buyer.
Exactly.
Right? So then you stand still. I thought that was a pretty compelling point.
And so it's a roll of the dice, really, when you're drawing up these contracts and you're trying to feel out what is an appropriate escalation clause that's going to protect me as a general contractor, but also the buyer at the end of the day that they'll actually agree to. An average Vermonter, especially if we're talking in the home construction market, is not going to swallow, an out of this world escalation clause, even
Right.
if it's the safest thing for a contractor. The other thing that I'm so lucky I got to go last because I get to piggyback off of everyone's very intelligent comments, but I think we all here could, agree that American manufacturing it's a great idea. We want American jobs, American made products. Easier said than done, right? And I'm sure Diane can speak a lot to the kind of capacity for American manufacturing at this point in history. I can say you can look to the construction industry as a sort of crystal ball of what that kind of looks like, because so many contractors, if you're working at all with federal money, so if you have, federal grants for a housing project, or really most every major transportation or infrastructure project, you're already responsible to abide by BABA, Build America, Buy America. And I hear from my contractors that BABA has had immense complications
Right.
with supply chain and just wait time. If I may read something that one of my members sent me, he told me we struggle with the cost of materials constantly. We aren't hearing the justification being tariffs, but we are really struggling right now with BABA compliance, specifically for multifamily housing. We can't find HVAC equipment that is made in the USA, and the waiver process is way too long. And so this is kind of I would say, if you want to know what this, how mandating American-made materials is
Right.
going to long-term impact businesses, construction is a pretty good indicator.
It is. Yeah.
The other thing I would add is, and it was talked about, the question of who's responsible, right, at the end of the day to accommodate these tariffs. I heard from another member, this is Lodgeness Construction in Barry, Vermont. He told me, quote, "We were delayed almost 2 months taking ownership of a new galvanized trailer from Canada, and it took them weeks to figure out who was paying the tariff. We ended up splitting the tariff with a dealer from Massachusetts, and it cost us an extra $7,000 on total cost." So that's not just the 7K, I will say, it's also those weeks.
Those weeks, right.
In construction, especially right now when it's so high in demand in Vermont. Time is money. And when we're
Right.
talking about building housing and whatnot, people need contractors on the ground now. We can't afford to wait weeks to figure out a $14,000 tariff bill.
Wow, that's amazing. A couple of things. Number one, there is a place where we could have tariffs, where you have a country that is using unfair competition and dumping their products here that are an unfair trade practice. I would support tariffs. China has been abusing us for quite some time, and the stealing of intellectual property, and also government subsidized manufacturing that then undercut the competitive basis upon which you should compete. So there is a place, but it should be specific, and it should be voted on by Congress. And I would support tariffs when it was addressing an unfair competition from another country. But what we're seeing here with the tariffs, according to everything you say and your experience, is that it's hurting American business. And it's both because of the cost that goes up, but it's also because of the incredible misadministration of the tariffs. You don't know what it will be. Again, you wouldn't buy a car. If your folks with the Rovers, that's a specialty thing, and those are iconic. But most of us, we need a car to get from here to there, and we might fuss about which kind of car we want. But I wouldn't buy a car if 6 weeks later we get in the mail and notice we have to pay another $5,000. That for a Vermonter, that's a big deal, right? So what you're telling me is just really shocking about even the administration of it. The cost is a burden. You've got to deal with that, and it's hard to. But if it's known, at least you know what you're dealing with. But the arbitrariness of it, or the complexity of it, and your story about whether you don't even know the date on which the tariff will be assessed. And it matters whether the product is on the barge or it's on the container ship, or you're getting your with you using barrels to get your product there, you're not buying barrels.
And that was the corrosion protection.
That was you,
Yeah.
to corrosion. That was you. Yeah, I guess I like whiskey.
Fair enough, yeah. Well, and the other thing that hasn't been discussed is the currency. We used to benefit from the American dollar being the global, financial currency
Strong
of
dollar.
choice, strong dollar, and it's been steadily eroding. And while our president likes to say that we've been taken advantage of, I think it's quite the opposite, in that we've been receiving significant benefits by the whole world trading in U.S. dollars, and it seems like the evidence is suggesting that we're going to lose that advantage, and the dollar is going to continue to get weakened as we're no longer a reliable trading partner.
Well, yeah, you were getting it. Yeah, I do think that's right. Okay, and I think what's happening now with us with having the tariffs, that universally all my colleagues have similar stories. Whether they're in I have a Republican conservative colleagues, Democratic colleagues, but if I ask my Republican colleagues, they have businesses like yours in their states. I'll go talk to them about this meeting, and I'll just say, I'm just kind of curious. We were talking to a whiskey manufacturer, and here's what they told me. What's the situation for your manufacturers? They'll tell me the same thing, because you're not unique. What you're doing and what you're contending with. There's counterparts in very red states that are doing the same thing. It's not about what your politics are. It's about what your responsibility is to make your business survive, hopefully thrive. So this is all counterproductive, and that's what mystifies me. We're doing something that's really hurting our own businesses and our own, you guys provide jobs to people in our community. And we should be doing everything we can to make your life easier, not harder. So these tariffs are really upsetting. And I get very upset in my job, because our job is on public policy, and we do have the responsibility in Congress to decide yes or no on taxes. And a tariff is a tax. And that's in the Constitution. That's not Peter Welch saying it. Okay, that's what our job is. And for us to be basically turning our back and not demanding that we vote on these things is really wrong. Because I think if we had to vote on these before they went into effect, then my counterparts, I'd be hearing from you. You'd be saying, Peter, here's what's at stake, right? And I'd listen to that. But I know my colleagues would too. But if we don't have to vote, then, and we just have to get in line, then that undercuts our ability to protect and help our manufacturers. So, it's not clear where this is going to go, but I am seeing increasing concern among my colleagues. And we had a vote in the Senate to repudiate some of these tariffs, and we did get some bipartisan support. It didn't go anywhere in the House, but I think that's the direction we've got to go, because this is just doing too much harm. And I think that the recent tariffs that the president is talking about that would be imposed on our long-standing European allies to facilitate the president's unilateral desire to take over Greenland, I think it's going to get more people talking about what's going on here. Okay, because this will do obviously a lot of national security harm to us if we're starting to attack our own allies that have been with us for through the Second World War and up into Afghanistan and Iraq, and we need them. But it's so moving to me to hear your stories and just think about the practical challenges that you have to face on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that's been such a wonderful experience for me in my job is that I've had an opportunity to go around and visit a lot of your businesses, and it's been quite moving to me. I was a lawyer before, and it's not that complex. You know, I had a small law firm. I think I mentioned we had more dogs in the office than lawyers. And then when we had to make a big decision like buying a photocopying machine, and my partner and I would run at lunch and talk about it and make a decision. But you guys have employees, you have rules and regulations, you've got complex markets, you know, that's a hard job. So my view is that those of us in government, public policy, the legislature, we should be doing everything we can where policies make it easier for you to do a hard job. And, you know, I think we've got to stand up to these tariffs, and that's just so you know where I'm coming from.
I think today the Supreme Court might be making a decision on tariffs. And
Pardon me?
I think the Supreme Court is making a decision today on a lawsuit. I believe that was thought.
The Supreme Court is making a decision, and what I'm seeing is that the administration is saying no matter what decision the court makes, and a lot of people think the court is going to say the obvious, and that is the Constitution says it's up to Congress to promote the tariffs. That the administration is saying very explicitly they've got backup plans to do a workaround. So we'll see what happens. But again, that, you know, there's an important issue here about how our democratic society is governed. And, you know, we have three branches. It's not to make it easy. It's that there be checks and balances so that there's not an accumulation of excessive authority in one branch or the other. And what has been concerning to me is, from my perspective, there's been an immense amount of executive overreach, but far too much congressional capitulation. And there's no more clear example than on tariffs, where that is in the Constitution, that it's our job to say yes or no. And we haven't done that. Now, many of us want to, but we've got to get some more votes to stand up to what I regard as executive overreach. But what's so compelling to me is it's not an abstract thing. It's a real consequence to real Vermont businesses. And you all have given these extraordinary examples. And for what purpose? You know, one of the absurd things, just to make it clear, you know, the farmers in the Midwest. I was out in Iowa and Nebraska about a month ago, and those farmers work hard, and they create incredible crops. You know, the soybeans and the corn. They've lost their markets, and now what the administration is doing is taking revenue from tariffs to subsidize the farmers. And the farmers tell me they don't want that. They don't want a government handout. They want to be able to sell their product. So they don't want the government destroying markets. They want to be able to sell. They don't want a handout. And I think that's, you know, most Vermonters, I think, are the same way. Pretty independent, pretty self-reliant. They want to make their own way. You know, work hard. Nobody's afraid of hard work around here. But you can't have the deck stacked against you. So we'll see where it goes, but it's an ongoing battle. And as I say, one of the things that's upsetting to me is that, you know, it's very partisan sort of scene that we're in, and none of us like that, really. But there's such opportunity here, because everything you have said, I don't know any of your politics, it doesn't matter. You're talking about what you have to do today to make your business operate. And it doesn't matter whether you're liberal or conservative. You've got an obligation to your company, to your workers. And if we all understood that in Congress, then we'd be trying to help the people that we represent. So that's my lament. But I'll get off my soapbox on it. But I really do admire you on what you're doing. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and you know, and to bring up what Jake was saying, was the complexity, and you just mentioned the complexity of these small companies in Vermont, or, you know, in large companies, navigating this morass of details and ever-changing world. And I know that we, at our department, proposed a way to actually, through congressional direct spending, to actually create a cadre of experts,
right,
including like A&M, Geringer, and lawyers and legal, trying to put it together so people could help navigate this world. And also, we don't know what's going to happen with the USMCA, which is up for renewal, and that's going to be people navigating whatever happens there as well. But coming up with that, and I don't know where that stands, where the CD, I mean, obviously the government shutdown did not help with the congressional direct spending requests, or where that stands. But
Well, we're starting to get back on track on some of the budgetary issues. I mean, there's in the Senate, there's pretty good bipartisan cooperation on the Appropriations Committee between Senator Murray and Senator Collins. And there's a number of us there who would like to get back to, it's absurd for me to be saying this, right? Because isn't it like our job to pass the budget? Right? So, we get this world where a miracle, we passed the budget. No, that's your job. Get to work. But there's a number of us who want to do it on both sides of the aisle. But this tariff is a real battle because it's the favored tool of the president. And as you've seen, he's using it everything from the original, started out with, I think, a legitimate concern about China dumping products here. But now it's about getting Greenland. It's about going after Brazil because their judicial process had an inquiry into their former president for corruption, right? I mean, so we're tariffs for the United States to get a judicial outcome that our president wants. That's not the point of tariffs. Or to get Greenland, that's not the point of tariffs, okay? Legitimate tariffs would be about defending American manufacturing against unfair competition that's promoted by a government. China is a good example. So I so appreciate everybody taking the time to come here. It's important what you do, and we have to have manufacturing in the state to have strong communities and to start dealing with the affordability crisis.
Absolutely.
I got an Uber driver I came up with today, and from my house, and we were talking. When I first started in politics, I was in Windsor County, but Springfield, Vermont, we had 5,500 machine tool jobs there, and it was a thriving community. Folks got a good vacation. A lot of folks had a deer camp or a modest camp on a pond somewhere. Saved a little money for their kids to get educated, and every single one of those jobs is gone, and that's bad for us. So even with the rural economy, where farming is obviously under a lot of pressure, but where even when it's doing well, it does well because there's also a manufacturing base. A strong rural economy is diverse.
And that expertise is not coming back,
Yeah.
As that generation retires and
Yeah.
as those jobs go away, we're not bringing more people into it. So it's not like we can just place more manufacturing facilities in Springfield
Right.
and expect the population to be able to keep up with that level of productivity
Right.
or even be paid the same amount that they were paid while they were able to have a deer camp. People are struggling to find places to live within an hour of where they can actually find
Right.
jobs.
This is awful. Yeah, no, I tell a story. When I first came to Vermont, I got out of law school and I had a chance to work in K Street and on Wall Street, but I wanted to have my own small firm, and I came to Vermont. I ended up on Bridge Street. But my first job was $9,000. I was a public defender. But my first apartment was $135, and I didn't have big student debt. So Peter Welch today, wanting to do what I did, how would you do it with the student debt, with how expensive housing is, And we got to deal with that as a state and as a country, really.
One thing I would add on the note of tariffs too, that I feel like is kind of the undercurrent of all this, but I didn't hear overtly said, is this is so much harder on small businesses
Yeah.
to navigate.
You don't have the infrastructure.
Exactly. Or if you have a larger margin, then you can, a $7,000 surprise bill is not going to be nearly as harmful to, say, a large firm with hundreds of employees than it is to the, 25 employee shop in Barrie.
Right.
Or if we're talking escalation clauses, if you're a really big firm, you can maybe afford to gamble a little bit and have a lower escalation clause, and that's going to win you the contract because the buyer is that's going to be preferable to them. And it's the small mom and pops that are really losing out.
They have
in
no
all of this.
flexibility.
Yes.
Yeah, and those small mom and pops are really essential.
Exactly.
And some of these small mom and pops become big mamas and daddas. I mean, like your business with robotics, that's so essential. right, for productivity. And, you know, you've got the small business, and it's essential because any business that's going to be productive, you've got to use robotics, right?
You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, we just don't have enough skilled workforce to do the jobs that we had previously.
Yeah.
And so we've lost so many manufacturing jobs, not because they've been automated away, but because manufacturing has left the state.
Yeah, the crisis. Well, are we? I'm so grateful to you. I got to tell you, it's such a privilege for me to be able to listen to people on the ground who are doing hard work and really important work. And, you know, it just empowers me to be as strong an advocate as I can be for some sensible policies here. But I think these tariffs are really, really a self-inflicted wound that is doing ongoing damage to our state. And I'm strongly opposed to them. You know, targeted tariffs that we vote on that are about making fair competition as opposed to giving preference. I'm open to that. But not to these across-the-board, arbitrary, ever-changing tariffs that are hurting our businesses. So thank you all so very much for all you do. And good luck to you. Baby doing it in a week.
Next week. Yep.
That's it. Can you believe this woman? She's here fighting for Vermont.
Show up
For
until you
Vermont.
can't. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. It's
Yeah.
really wonderful to be with you. I really appreciate it.
It's important because, one, we have a direct line of communication with our vendors, who are manufacturers that we procure from, as well as our customers who we sell to and design products for. And tariffs are impacting them across the board. Some of our customers actually thought that their orders were going to go up when the tariffs were announced. They were receiving opportunities to bid programs with companies they hadn't had before. But that was a year ago, and those bids never materialized into POs. And so everyone's in a bit of a holding pattern, just uncertain with what is actually going to land.
No, I think you explained obviously the backup and kind of the confusion, but there are people who think this is a really good idea. And obviously there are several other businesses all around our region here. So from your point of view, this is having, to some, obviously, a negative impact. Is that what you're seeing?
I'm seeing that, but I do have to say that there are required policies to start modernizing and increasing investment in manufacturing in Vermont and across the country. The idea that we need to focus and bring more manufacturing back on our shores is a good one. It's just, as the senator said earlier, it's the execution of that that's really falling short. The uncertainty, as well as not really using it to supplement U.S. manufacturing where we're in a trade deficit, but instead focusing on things that seem, frankly, arbitrary. Manufacturing. They make drawers for dormitory or military.
They make what?
Drawers.
Like dressers,
Dresser
drawers. Here, I can.
It's Vermont, what?
New England Woodcraft.
Where are they?
They're in Bradford, I think.
Down south, an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So is this is a machine tool for them?
So yeah, so for them, yeah, this is an automatic gluing system, and so what's really exciting for us is our software tries to kind of push the boundaries. Robotics has been really good at like high precision things that are just super repeatable. But
Yeah.
what it's left behind is high mix, and that's all of small
When
businesses.
you say high mix, what's that?
So for them, they make dozens and dozens and dozens of types of drawers, and so for a robotics company to come in, a lot of them will look at it and say, okay, we can do this drawer. You have to program every single drawer. And it's difficult to handle all of the different types of drawers. And because they're not very precise, they're made differently. We do a lot in corrugated boxes, which also have a lot of variation to them.
Yeah.
And so when there's a ton of variation, it makes it really difficult to hand program every single one of those variations. And you'll need a robotics expert to come in, program that specific product, and then leave, and then the operator still has to come in. It's really expensive and doesn't work very well a lot of the times because it's difficult to look at such a wide range.
Manufacturers have to be able to do things on site.
They have to be able to do things on site, but also the technology has to improve. And so that's something that we're really excited about. So there's a camera up here that has LiDAR in it, so 3D imaging.
Yeah.
And that 3D imaging can look at the differences in the drawers and then communicate that to the robot so that engineers don't have to program every single drawer type.
That's amazing.
And it allows people to, at a much more cost-effective way, run automation for these smaller businesses that have a lot of different types of drawers, that have a lot of different types of boxes or products. And so the technology is just getting to the point where that level of flexibility is available with robotics.
Wow.
Allowing small businesses for the first time to really utilize that level of productivity. And
wow, that is amazing. So that's like critical for the future of small manufacturing.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
Totally.
I mean, what we were talking about in terms of U.S. manufacturing staying competitive, it's not on price. We can't produce goods cheaper than other countries right now.
Right.
So what they do is they either specialize in their brands, or they're able to do a wide variety of different products and focus on the customer needs and put those first. And so how do we design robots that are for U.S. manufacturers and kind of meet them where their production needs are at?
And this is also where some of these things are, you brought up China a couple of times. The robots coming out of China are 10 times less expensive than the ones in the U.S. right now because of massive, they've been subsidizing the cost, and they have an initiative to automate manufacturing in ways that we've never seen. And when we saw the CEO of Ford come back from touring BYD plants saying, well, one, they're the size of San Francisco. There's robots everywhere, and they're producing at a productivity that we've never seen before. And that he's terrified because how are we going to match this true productivity? It's not a,
Right.
this is real efficiency. And so without these massive investments into the technology itself, the infrastructure to support that technology, which isn't just, a couple companies, it's a whole supply chain really feeding into it. We need to be able to match that true efficiency, which is got to be met by the small business. And so something that we're so focused on is being that partner for the small to medium-sized business, because we see a future that isn't just large Amazon robotics, where they acquire every robotics company and bring that in-house. We see distributing that technology so that a small manufacturer in Vermont can use the same level of productivity and efficiency that the biggest can.
That is incredible.
And so it allows us small pockets of highly productive people producing the products that the people need in their regional economy and keeping that all inside of it. And that requires investment, and it requires a focus, and it requires this, acknowledgement that we can become that productive, that productive. And so we really need to set this course and this vision to say, hey, without this, it's also really exciting for young people. Whereas, the manufacturing jobs of the past may not have been as exciting, to come in and see robots and to see a path towards learning these kind of advanced skill sets and looking towards the manufacturing economy of the future, which is really exciting, brings people in so quickly.
It's great. Unbelievable. I love this.
So we're really passionate about robotics, obviously. But, the other side of it is it's an existential crisis if we don't do this.
Right.
If we don't start to invest and we don't start to say, hey, what level of automation and productivity, and I think for Vermont, it's the most important, because we're seeing, less and less productivity, people are moving away, and we can replace that with things that truly move the ball. Whereas we used to focus on, people doing one thing, but now people can focus on the quality of what they're doing. They can focus on making more of it, reaching out to their customers. That huge laundry list of that every small business has, they can start to get to. And it's just important.
Well, that's amazing that you have a
camera.
A camera, and then it can communicate with the program.
Yep.
And then adjust it so it does its work.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
incredible.
As long as the drawer is within a size range, it can see it and glue it. And that makes it super easy for manufacturers to just push the start button and see more productivity.
It's really amazing.
This is in development, but we're going to be installing it next month.
I mean, we can't be without it, actually. It's that essential.
It's not just the lack of labor, it's that knowledge that is
That's what I'm saying.
largely retiring. You don't have the one person who can do that one job super effectively, but then you try and put someone else in and they just can't keep up at that same speed. Or someone who knows the ins and outs of how to tune a machine to get it to run flawlessly, but it's not in a manual. It's not being handed down to another apprentice. And so we really see this as a way of supporting what the future of manufacturing needs to look like right here in Vermont.
It's exciting. I think it's pretty cool.
Which is small manufacturers,
Yeah.
not necessarily just the largest, consolidated manufacturers. It's giving people access to this technology so that they can become the manufacturer of the future.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you so much. It's impressive.